Good morning, everyone. There's a story told about this poor man who comes to a town and needs a place to eat. They tell him there's this wealthy Jew in town, but he's a miser. He doesn't like to give tzedakah. So he invites you to his table, but he riddles you with questions. He peppers you with questions throughout the meal, so you don't get a chance to eat his food because he has the waiters take away the food while he's engaging you in questions. And this poor Jew says, don't worry, I'll give the chanetza, I'll manage fine. He goes to the rich man's home, he sits down at a lavish table, they serve the first course. He's about to put his fork in his mouth. The rich Jew says, where are you from? He says, I'm from this town. He says, do you know my friend Zalman the tailor? He says, yeah. He says, how's he doing? He says, gestorben, he died. He says, Zalman, my friend, died? I didn't know this. The man's in shock. While he's in shock, the poor man's eating. So he sees he's eating his food. He says, how's my friend Yanko the shoemaker? He says, gestorben, he died too. He said, what? Yanko died? I can't believe this. No one told me. He's just in a state of disbelief. While he's in shock, the poor man's eating. Finally, he sees he's eating his food. He says, and how is Chaim, the guy who has the grocery store? He says, gestorben, he died too. He says, I can't believe it. Meanwhile, he's eating. Finally, he says, I don't understand. Is there some epidemic, a plague in your town? Everyone's dying? He says, listen to me, sir. He says, when I eat, the ganze Welt is gestorben, the whole world is dead, right? So Abraham Avinu in this week's parsha shows us the opposite example. Literally, the whole world is dead to Abraham when he has an opportunity to serve guests. Everything stops, so much so that he's in the middle of a conversation with God. One of the most fascinating lessons the Talmud says, that receiving guests is greater than receiving God himself. We learned this from Abraham. Abraham says, God, wait a minute, I got guests to take care of. And he runs to take care of his guests. But one of the things that the Torah tells us is the menu that Abraham served them. Now, if the Torah tells you a menu, the Torah doesn't give us extra information. You know, it could have just said he served them a nice meal. The Torah has to tell us the menu. And what is the menu? The menu is meat and milk. And the question is, 1 minute, Abraham kept the Torah before it was given. Why would he serve them milk and meat? It's forbidden, milk and meat. Abraham serving milk and meat together. So, of course, the commentators give various answers. He served the milk first. You only have to wait a half hour, and then after the milk, they ate the meat. Or alternatively, they weren't Jews, so he didn't want to impose his religion on them, his practices. So for non-Jews traveling, he was able to give them. He didn't know they were angels, so he serves them milk and meat. But clearly the Torah is telling us that he serves them the milk and then the meat. What's the lesson in this? Everything in the Torah is a blueprint for our lives. It's not random information. Surely Abraham could have served something else and not run into the difficulty of milk and meat. Why did he deliberately choose to give them milk? And one of the beautiful answers is as follows. Abraham wanted to make his guest the most comfortable as possible. Sometimes you have guests, but the guests feel bad. They feel dependent on you. So a good host knows how to make his guests feel welcome, and not just welcome, but they shouldn't feel like they're the recipients of a favor. You're putting me out, you're eating my food like this guy, the miser, right? The guest should feel it's a pleasure to serve you. I'm happy you're here. You're not a problem. You're not a headache for me. You're not a disturbance. You're a welcome guest, and it's my pleasure to serve you. So Abraham wants to communicate to his guests that they're not a burden on him. So what does he do? He serves them milk first. Why milk? So it's fascinating. The first time we eat milk is when we're born. From our mother's breast, we get milk. What happens when it comes to breast milk? The more a mother nurses her baby, the more the milk, the glands of the breast fill with more quality and quantity of milk. If the mother withholds her breast milk, what happens? The flow ceases and the milk dries up. And so the first lesson a baby learns when they come into this world, as they're getting their mother's milk, so to speak, is in life, the more you give, the more the channels flow in your direction, and the more quantity and quality you will have to give to others. But the minute you hold back, the minute you choose not to share what God gave you, not only don't you have the ability to give to others, but you lose it yourselves. Your own flow of milk begins to dry up, and you lose it as a result. And that's what Abraham is trying to communicate to his guests. Enjoy the food, because it's my pleasure. Not only is it my pleasure to serve you, but the more I give, the more I will receive. Like the milk, the more the mother gives, the more she receives in return. quantitatively and qualitatively. And that is the epitome of Abraham, which represents the pillar of kindness, of chesed, that in life, don't be afraid to give generously. And don't think you're going to have less by giving more. On the contrary, the more you give, the more you'll have. Chafetz Chaim uses this analogy to explain it. He says there was once a man who was a farmer. He had potatoes, sacks of potatoes. He would go deliver it to the market, to someone, to sell it to someone else. And when he would deliver the sacks of potatoes, he had a lot of sack of potatoes to deliver. So they put a bowl down, and every time he put a sack of potatoes, he threw a coin, a kupka, a little coin into the bowl. And after he delivered all the sacks, they would count the coins and then figure out how many sacks of potatoes and pay accordingly whatever the price of a sack of potatoes was. He says, but the delivery guy, the farmer, as he's delivering to the rich man the sacks of potatoes, he's greedy. He sees a bowl filled with coins. So when the rich man's not looking, he swipes a handful and he puts it in his pocket. Says the Chafetz Chaim, who did he steal from? He stole from himself. Because for every coin he stole, he deprived himself of payment for a sack of potatoes. Says the Chafetz Chaim, sometimes we think by withholding charity, by not being generous, by keeping it in our pocket rather than giving it to the poor man, we're going to have more in our bank account. We're going to have more in our pockets, in our wallet. And the Chafetz Chaim says, no, it's like the farmer stealing the coins. Every coin you hold back, or every dollar, or every contribution, you didn't gain. You lost the reward you would have gotten, which would have been tenfold. And therefore, remember to be generous, and don't feel bad when you give away your hard-earned money. Know that that will be the source of the greatest blessings to you in your life.